r/AskReddit. What conspiracy theories actually make sense and could be true? Part 2. Disclaimer. This is all theories we found on the internet and just compiled them into one video. Check out the description box for all the articles mentioned in the video. The Titanic never sank. The Olympic, sister ship, hit a Navy carrier and was found at fault, causing the White Star Line thousands in damages. This was proven by records. The theory is the Olympic was taken back to the shipyard, cosmetically repaired, and the nameplates were switched. Then she sailed under the name Titanic and was sunk on purpose for the insurance money. There was never supposed to be a loss of life, as there were 3 rescue vessels around the area she had sank, proven fact. Though all 3 underwent a problem that contributed to them not reaching or communicating with the Titanic in time, that fateful night. And 2 of the ships got cited for being in a place they shouldn't have been by maritime officials. Their logs showed they weren't supposed to be there, yet they were recorded as sitting stagnant at those coordinates for days, proven by citation records. In addition, the direction was wrong. The Titanic sailed further north of the shipping lanes than she was supposed to. This would also explain why the temp went from 70s mid-afternoon to icy by nightfall. The temp dropping is another proven fact according to witness statements. The Titanic also underwent a series of misfortune during its voyage. Binoculars lost, wrong coordinates, using SOS instead of CQD, exceeding recommended specs. All of which contributed to its sinking and the tragic loss of life. There's a few documentaries and a few books written about it. Interesting concept, and by now, completely unable to prove or disprove. I think there are more potentially true conspiracies that have become well heard than ones that are unlikely. Take the Free Britney movement. For several years a group of people believed she was being held in an unjust conservatorship against her will with no real way to seek help, and was sending messages through her weird TikTok and Insta videos. Everyone called them drama-obsessed conspiracy theorists. Even Britney herself made statements that she was fine. Turns out that was all true, and her freedom was made possible in big part by the conspiracy theorists. If it stands to make parties involved a lot of money and or give them a lot of power, and they have the means, the likelihood of it being possible increases greatly. Back in the mid-1990s, my friend, a right-wing conspiracy nut, told me that Bill Clinton and his rich friends would fly out to some pedo island in the Caribbean. Sounded like total BS at the time. No existence is provable but your own consciousness, so you may be a single speck floating in an empty void right now. Search up solipsism. That Jack the Ripper was not a man, but a woman. There's a decent bit of solid evidence pointing to this theory. There is no possible way Mark Zuckerberg is human. He once said, "I was human on accident." How the hell you say that on accident? He even just looks like some sort of robot trying to calculate what emotions to express all the time. Saw one conspiracy in the comments that explains that there's a group of mega rich people controlling the world, and I wouldn't be surprised if they genetically engineered Zuckerberg or even built him. William Shakespeare is a pseudonym for a group of female playwrights who were not able to publish their works as they wouldn't have been taken seriously during the 16th century. So they all published their genre-defining comedies and tragedies under a collective name that sounds so manly that the surname could allude to being on innuendo for a penis, shaking your spear. My grandmother was convinced that Prince Andrew was not the son of the Queen and Prince Philip, but was actually the son of Margaret and Armstrong Jones. She claimed that a journalist friend of hers found out the story, but was warned off. Compare pics of Andrew against Charles, Edward, then compare him to pics of David Lindley. Joaquin Phoenix really did have a mental breakdown in 2008, but he made the mockumentary I'm Still Here so that he could deflect negative attention by claiming that it was all just an act to promote a movie. Call me crazy, but I find it incredibly hard to believe that anyone would spend 2 straight years in character just to promote a movie. Especially a movie that grossed less than $1 million. Nobody is that dedicated. On September 10, 2001, Donald Rumsfeld let us know the government lost track of $2.3 trillion. Very next day, Pentagon was hit and apparently hit the very server room that may have helped us track it back down. Due to the events on September 11, 2001, virtually everyone forgot about the lost money. I believe that Jesus probably was married and had children with Mary Magdalene. I believe that the heads of the church have only translated and published that which would help their aspirations. There was no way they would admit Jesus had a wife for a few reasons. 1. Jesus being married and having conjugal relations is a very human thing. It would take away from the perceived divinity of Jesus. 2. The heads of the church didn't want anyone to get the idea that a woman could be so close to Jesus and important to Jesus. I think that's why they say she was a prostitute. Can't have gender equality in God's kingdom. I think there is a lot more that they left out because it's easier to control the people when you control the words of God. Muslim here, in our tradition, it's believed that Jesus will return and that he will get married and die like a normal human being. The Christian tradition attributes divinity to Jesus in a godly sense, whereas the Islamic tradition attributes it divine in the sense that he was a messenger of God. Which is funny with the above comment because in our tradition, it's highly encouraged to get married, and one of the purposes of inheritance and marriage was to prevent monarchies and monopolies. I thought Christians and monks were abstinent due to their view on sex, but now it makes a ton more sense that it's to prevent money from going out of the church or monastery. It would only take 3 or 4 popes before the church loses an extremely significant amount of wealth. It may also explain why there is a notion that priests molest and assault little boys and not little girls, because there is no possibility of pregnancy and so no possibility for a child to be there who would have a right in inheritance. The Dyatlov Pass incident. I'm convinced there was something more than just a machine accident or hypothermia going on. It's literally called Devil's Pass, and the entire climbing crew shows up dead with parts of their face missing. Not torn out, just cleanly gone, no evidence of being there. There's something going on there. Medical euthanasia is against the law, in the US, so that the healthcare system can profit off of the disabled and terminally ill for as long as possible. It will be kept illegal under the guise of maintaining religious values. David Miscavige, the chairman of the Church of Scientology, definitely murdered his wife and is getting off scot-free for it. Him and his wife got into a pretty heated argument in 2007, and she hasn't been seen since. Lawyers hired by David claim she is still alive and devotes 100% of her time to work at the Church of Scientology, which is why she hasn't been seen since August 2007. In 2013, a former member of the church had filed a missing person report that was closed after a few officers had spoken and seen Mrs. Miscavige, even though there's no evidence whatsoever of this meeting. All missing persons reports now are turned down since this investigation is forever closed. Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony was a suicide note. Tchaikovsky committed suicide. For reasons that he likely committed suicide is because he was gay, and being gay in Russia during that time was illegal, and going to another country wouldn't help because homosexuality was illegal in the whole world, so if knowledge about his homosexuality got to the public, then his reputation as a figure of Russia would be destroyed. What's worse was that people were already starting to catch on to his love life, and starting gossiping about it, which in response Tchaikovsky arranged a fake marriage with a woman so people would stop, but that marriage lasted only a couple of months. Soon the court found out that Tchaikovsky was gay and decided that the only way to secure his reputation and position was to kill himself, so Tchaikovsky, overwhelmed by the public, agreed. Now what's interesting is that Tchaikovsky's official cause of death was cholera, which he got from forgetting to boil water, but that would be the stupidest way to die, and he's been doing that for his entire life and not even once forgot to boil the water until now. And, the only way you could die from cholera is to have the worst case, which wasn't Tchaikovsky's. Plus, he even refused a doctor from examining his illness. Much after his death, a British medical expert said that his symptoms related very closely to arsenic poisoning. And about his Sixth Symphony, Tchaikovsky was asked if the symphony had any personal expression, which Tchaikovsky said yes, and that symphony ended up having the only symphony of his to have a depressing ending 4-movement. The end of his 3-movement sounds like the end of a symphony. A lot of rich and powerful people didn't want Epstein alive. With the number of millionaires/billionaires that are psychopaths or similar, there must be a few super rich serial killers out there. By extension, there must be people making money supplying victims in the same way Epstein was supplying girls to the wealthy who wanted to scratch an itch. With the money, power and influence would come governments and intelligence agencies willing to overlook or cover up terrible actions for leverage. I'll take the low-hanging fruit. The Epstein quote suicide was outrageous. I've never seen an issue in recent memory where the far left and far right were in complete agreement and equally outraged over the same issue. Calling it a conspiracy theory doesn't do it justice. It's a hypothesis, and a highly likely one, that he was killed or was allowed to kill himself. The cameras malfunctioned and the guards fell asleep. For duck's sake, that is some lazy plot writing. This one isn't as serious as most of the ones on here, but I enjoy it and have gotten into many a convo about it. In the 2017 NBA playoffs, a player named Markieff Morris, who at the time played for the Washington Wizards, hurt his ankle in Game 1. This was only 11 minutes into the game and he didn't return. The injury looked like he would be out for a couple weeks and no one expected him to play Game 2. But, he showed up Game 2 and played as if he was never injured, in fact, had his best game statistically of the playoffs to that point. Here's where it gets interesting. Markieff Morris has an identical twin brother named Marcus who also plays in the NBA. His brother was playing for the Pistons, who were eliminated from the playoffs already. The theory is that Marcus played for his brother. Both brothers have the exact same tattoos and don't have any super apparent different traits. That we will evolve, due to environmental pressures, indoor living, maybe genetic engineering, into smaller, pale, hairless, genderless creatures with larger heads and larger eyes. We will continue to advance technology, but our immune systems will weaken. We will develop time travel and go back to the 1900s to harvest fecal samples from rural citizens to help improve our immune systems. TLDR, those weren't aliens. They were time travelers. My brother told me something similar to this when we were kids. He swore he was abducted after getting a strange illness. He said aliens were us from the future trying to genetically backtrack their evolution because their immune systems were so decayed they pretty much had to live in their gray spacesuits at all times. The doctors never figured out what he was sick from even after 3 months in the hospital. Then one day poof back to normal. I should also mention my brother was pretty straight edge. This theory by a Redditor which was later removed and the user was site-wide banned for reasons I don't know. Robert Kardashian destroyed evidence that would have convicted O.J. He was handed a Louis Vuitton garment bag by O.J.'s assistant right as O.J. returned from Chicago. None of the cops paid any attention to him as he walked away with the bag. When the bag theory was discovered a month later, Kardashian claimed to have lost it. Article and video footage in the description below. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the dictator of Turkey, is behind the 2016 coup attempt. He did it to make himself seem like a hero so he could gain more support. That there are still boys' bodies buried under an apartment building lawn by John Wayne Gacy at Miami X Elston in Chicago. A couple months ago someone uploaded a new mini docuseries on YouTube about serial killer John Wayne Gacy called Devil in Disguise, which was promptly removed from YouTube, but I still found the full series, perhaps not through the NBC Peacock app. Anyways. Holy hell, it's driving me bananas. There are reports of Gacy doing yard work at night. Of digging ditches around the building. Of filling the ditches overnight instead of during the day. A man in the documentary was about 8 years old at the time and Gacy paid him to do little things like take out the apartment building trash. He lived across the street from the building and his bedroom window happened to face the lawn where a lot of ditch digging had been happening. He was the one that said they had been filled overnight. He described exactly what shape the ditches were. As an adult, he drew a map for the police who were being pressured into searching the property about where he remembered the ditches being. He said, "There are 2 places you don't need to dig. One of them is where this bush is. Because the bush was there before I moved there, and the roots are dense, so he couldn't have dug it up and put someone there and put the bush back there." Anyways, so in 2013 the police finally searched the grounds using ground-penetrating radar, which can give a fairly accurate hit without digging. In the documentary it is shown that the police barely checked the grounds, and they checked the 2 places the now adult man said no bodies could be there. Why I am thinking about this again is since about a month and a half ago Indigenous communities in Canada are searching residential school grounds for children and community members that were killed in the schools or buried in unmarked graves. They are using ground-penetrating radar to search places that elders/knowledge keepers say there are people. So far 5 places have been searched and there are over 1,500 hits from this radar method. Which is another reason why I cannot believe at all that the police actually searched the grounds. It's like, here's another conspiracy. Okay, the Chicago Police Department find bodies, okay then what? People involved in the original case are still alive. Gacy was probably part of a bigger sex traffic ring which they did not investigate. Politicians, police, and other powerful people were probably involved in the sex traffic ring of teenage boys and young men, why else not follow any leads on it back then? So some of these people who were part of that original case are still alive, old as F, but alive, and for some reason that shit matters. Additionally, if they found bodies on the apartment grounds, the amount of money that the city would have to come up with and also ask state/feds for to buy the apartment complex to completely mess it up? Pay off everyone to move out? Then the money to pay all the investigators, engineers, scientists, etc. To get people out of the ground, to demolish and rip stuff apart, to DNA test the found bodies, etc. 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 In the documentary they show you how much people hours and money went into searching Gacy's house. I don't imagine the Chicago police want more bad press dating from the 70s, with a crap ton of their cash flow going to this case again. Joe Biden is suffering from dementia and policy is being run by the cabinet and White House advisors. This will be more or less confirmed after the administration the same way it's been essentially confirmed that Reagan was suffering from Alzheimer's. Google CAPTCHA, where you have to select all the photos of bridges, crosswalks, bicycles, cars, trains, stoplights, fire hydrants, etc. are basically helping to advance self-driving car technology to recognize and identify hazards in the road, etc. That dandelions are now considered a weed because Big Pharma wants to sell heart medication. The dandelion root is very good for you to eat, and is amazing for your heart. Lived in a small town where one of the most famous disappearances of young girl who went missing one night while riding her bike. Years later a photo emerged of a young girl and boy bound with their mouths taped in a van. Everyone says it resembles her. It's rumored in that town that a sheriff deputy hit and killed her with his patrol car and buried her and her bike elsewhere. This deputy later became the sheriff. Electric toothbrushes. I've never been one for conspiracy theories, but please bear with me on this one. Manual toothbrushes are superior to electric toothbrushes. Now I know most of you must be thinking I'm crazy right now. That's dumb. Electric toothbrushes have been scientifically proven to be better than a manual toothbrush, but have they? Studies have been carried out and shown to not uphold the scientific method. A quote from Jane L. Forbest et al. A study that looked at all studies involving the electric toothbrush states the majority of studies did not meet the standards for inclusion. In moving forward, it will be important to conduct methodologically sound studies demonstrating the ability of power toothbrushes to reduce the incidence and prevalence of caries and periodontal disease. So why would this make sense? Well, A. Dentists want us to use them as this will make business boom as they are inferior to manual toothbrushes. B. Have you ever had to use your manual toothbrush in place of your electric one for one night for whatever reason? Be it your electric toothbrush died or you're at someone else's house, etc. Well, I have, and every time I do it my mouth consistently bleeds, followed by yellow plaquey foam, a sign of a good clean if you improperly clean your teeth regularly. I've asked my friends and they all claim the same. I've seen this online also. See, they are much more profitable. Electric toothbrushes are so damn expensive. They can go well into the hundreds and consistently need new heads and batteries over time. Worst of all, the more expensive ones are made by companies endorsing, promoting, and hiring dentists, the very cohort of people who want these things to thrive for their own business. What do you guys think? Have I lost it? On January 15, 2018 in Omaha, Nebraska, the lights flickered momentarily at 9:05 p.m. Nothing odd about this until people from counties and even states surrounding Nebraska stated that their lights flickered too. I saw posts from people in South Dakota and Iowa stating their lights flickered. People also saw a flash. I honest to God think it was someone hacking into the power grid. Local power company said it was a surge, but it didn't explain how it occurred from Missouri all the way to South Dakota and through half of Iowa. Young Sheldon and Big Bang Theory involve occult workings, specifically the word Bazinga. I don't like to write it out. Jack Parsons worked at Caltech. Jim Parsons plays a scientist that works at Caltech, and he has this mysterious phrase that no one can find the origin of, and it somehow makes its way into the zeitgeist and on merch, perpetuating it, much as how one would add power to a sigil. Perhaps not so coincidentally, CBS's streaming service, All Access, has a new show out, Strange Angel, which is a fictionalized portrayal of none other than Jack Parsons. Is CBS continuing the magical work started by the Big Bang Theory? What is young Sheldon advancing in the dark? Furthermore, Jack Parsons was an associate with L. Ron Hubbard, and of course, guess who runs Hollywood? Scientology. There's a company a mile away from me, quite a large production building, with a company logo right on the building, own website that doesn't say much anyway, etc., with a huge lawn in the front entrance gate, and all surrounded by the fence. No one ever seen anybody leaving or entering its grounds. There are no cars coming in or out yet. The building is definitely occupied and somebody is working in it. Doesn't have many windows though. It definitely doesn't look like a warehouse or data center or anything similar, more like a factory. Now, there's a conspiracy theory here in my city that it's an MI5 MI6 safe house or some sort of ops building. I always considered it as a conspiracy theory until I moved into the area a few years ago and either drive by or walk by this building almost every day. The JFK assassination is really sketchy. I have no idea what happened, but I'd be surprised if Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Oswald was exactly what he claimed to be after being arrested and transported to the Dallas police station, a patsy, set up to take the fall for the whole thing. I think that moment in the second floor break room where he was seen by the book depository manager and a Dallas cop 90 seconds after the shots were fired with a half empty or half full, depending on how you view such things, bottle of Coke in his hand, is the moment when the whole thing became clear to him. The plot didn't go entirely as planned, as plots never do, and everyone improvised. But Kennedy was dead, which was the goal. Next, Oswald was dead and Jack Ruby begged Earl Warren to get him out of prison or soon he would be dead too. And he was right. Loose ends being tied up everywhere. In the years since, there have been several deathbed confessions by people who claim to be involved. Sam Giancana, the Chicago mobster who had a motive for killing Kennedy over going back on his word to return Cuba to the mob after Kennedy backed the Cuban freedom fighters in their coup attempt, was also shot to death in his kitchen. Mobsters frequently rub each other out, but there was no clear beef among the families that would warrant his murder, and no suspect has ever been found. The accidental missile alert in Hawaii wasn't an accident. The theory goes that a radical branch of the Chinese military launched a nuke from a sub in the middle of the Pacific. Hawaiian anti-missile defense shot it down, and the Chinese military then destroyed their own sub. Kinda sus on their part. According to insiders, there is no button that could be accidentally hit. There are 5 fail-safe procedures in the Hawaiian Emergency Alert Management System, the last being a 2-key system such as are present in U.S. missile silos and on U.S. nuclear missile submarines. 2 keys, 8 feet apart, requiring 2 different individuals to simultaneously and positively trigger the alert. Thank you for watching. This is the end of part 2. Please like and subscribe and tell us some of your own thoughts and theories in the comments below.